Good morning.
I'll let you know when everybody is here. Starting to come in.
That's all right. People are going to watch it later.
Oh, yes, true.
And they'll be excited about it. You got that? We're all hooked up? Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. It's Sew Together Tuesday. I'm Teresa Coates. I'm the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics, and today we are doing part 2 of our Bambino Cuddle quilt. So I'm happy that you're back. If you were here yesterday, please give me a little thumbs up or something. I'm excited that people are coming back day after day. So thank you for joining us. We're really happy to have you all here. During this time that we're all sort of, staying home, we're safer at home, and it's really important that we're finding something to do during our time that we're here. And I'm really happy that you're sewing with us. And I hope that you and your family are all healthy and happy. So thanks for being with me today. Today we're going to do the binding for our blanket. Okay, so if you were here yesterday, you saw how we constructed the whole thing. And I've got a whole lot of stuff in front of me. But let me show you what we did yesterday. All right. As we're going today, I want to remind you to make sure that you leave your city and state. So write that in a comment, okay? At the end, we'll draw a winner. We're gonna give away kits. Not sure exactly when we're sending them out because everything is a little bit fluid right now, but we will totally send the winner a kit, okay? So yesterday we made this one, which is the Ear for You Snow Kit. Okay, we put this whole thing together yesterday, so if you were here, you got to see me put together a blanket real fast. Okay, super cute. All right, and it has the marble on the back. You can see I finished trimming it. All right, so it's all squared up, ready to go, and now we just have to do the binding. Okay, so that's what we're going to work on today. So we've got some other tools that we've got. So this is my binding fabric that was in my kit. Okay, if you remember, all of our kits come with everything that you're going to need for the front and the binding. The smaller ones will come with the backing as well. So this one was an inclusive kit that included the backing, the binding, and all of the front pieces. Okay, so this was the piece that I set aside yesterday that is for my binding. The trick for this to remember which one is your binding, one, you can look at the picture. Okay, so we have our little picture and it shows me this is my binding fabric. I figured out that's what this is, right? Because it doesn't look like anything else there. Okay, so this is what I want. The other thing is to remember that your binding is always going to be with the fabric, okay? Because we want the longest pieces possible. So in the kit, we're going to give you a piece that's 60 inches wide. So all of these other pieces were cut at 30 inches because that's what the size of the quilt is. We just cut the pieces in half. But the binding fabric is going to be the full length, okay? So this guy is a big, long one, all right? So this is how I know this is my binding piece. That's the other confirmation that yes, this is the binding because it's the 60 inches wide, okay? So today we're going to cut this out and put the binding on. If you haven't done binding before with Cuddle, it's a little bit different. There are some things that are similar to quilting with cotton or, binding with cotton, and then there are some things that are very different. So some of the techniques are the same, some of them are different. All right, so let's get started. Did I forget anything? Are we good?
Just a general overview of what's going on in
the world. Okay. So I'm going to put my little blanket aside, my little kit aside here. Okay, and we futzed with the microphone a little bit today to see if we could get the sound better. So if you're having issues with the sound, let us know and we're going to try to figure out how to get it to not make weird noises for you. So let me know if the sound is good or if we need to do something, and we'll see what we can make happen. Okay, so the first thing about binding with Cuddle is that it is a different measurement. So typically when we bind with cotton, we do it at 2 inches, 2 1/4, 2 1/2, depends on which method you're using. With Cuddle binding, we're always going to do it at 1 3/4 inches. Okay, so that's a little bit different. And that confuses people, but I'll tell you, if you do it too wide, so if you do it 2 inches or above, 2 inches you could fit it on here, but if you do it more than 2 inches, you run out of fabric. Okay, and that definitely, happens in class sometimes, is that people will have cut it too wide. So don't do that, okay? 1 3/4 inches is what we do. I cut it a little bit heavy, 1 3/4, which means that when I put my ruler down here, I'm gonna see if we can get this on there. Okay, I'm going to put this, actually I might trim this guy up. Okay, so I'm going to see what I've got here. So I've got 6 inches. This is cut a little bit wonky here. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim this. You saw yesterday I didn't trim up any of my pieces. The binding is where we're actually going to want to make sure that it is accurate. And I'm going to use my rotary cutter today. Okay, and then we're going to do a lot of vacuuming. So sorry, but that's how it's going to work.
We'll talk about that vacuum.
Okay. Oh, so the vacuum cleaner is this Black & Decker. I've bought 3 of them in the last few years. They all work still, so that's great. We use them all the time in the house. You can tell it's well loved. Okay, so it's this guy. The reason I like it is because it blows air out here, okay, instead of out the side. So if you have a hand vac that blows out the side, what it does is it blows your cuddle dust all over the studio. So if it's in the back, I can vacuum up here and it blows air out here and doesn't blow my cuddle dust around. Okay, all right, so I'm going to show you on this and then I'll go down. So I've trimmed up this side. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cut 1 3/4. But when I say that I'm going to cut it a little heavy, what I'm doing is looking at this line here. This is my 1 3/4 line, and I just get it right inside the edge. So instead of lining my line up here, I push it over just a little bit. Okay, that makes sense. It just gives me the tiniest little bit of extra. That's all I need. I don't want more than that because it starts to get too big at that point. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this. So generally what I do is I will do this sort of thing where I cut and then I cut and I cut and I'll move. So I'll vacuum after I do this and then I'll move the whole bit of fabric down. So you can't really see too well, but there's a line that I'm following here. Then I'm putting that 1 3/4 inches on that side. Okay, do it one more time because this was 6 inches. So I have more than enough to use, and I'm going to cut off the end, which is why I'll trim that up. And like I said, it's the one time that we need to be really accurate. Okay, this binding for the other part of the quilt, we can sort of just be a little loose with it. Whoops, I turned it off before I wanted to. Okay, you'll notice it sucks up and I can just pull it right back out. One thing I will show you is that if you pull it, you get this thing that starts to happen where it starts to curl. Do you see that? So anytime it gets pulled, so one of the things that I like to do is try not to get it sucked up into the vacuum too much. It happens. But the other thing is that when you take this, so if you're going to take it outside and give it a good shake, don't pull it. So sometimes people want to run their hands down it like this and pull off all of the fibers. And if you do that, you stretch it and it makes the whole binding curl. Okay, so don't do that. That is never a fun idea because then you end up fighting it the rest of the way. Okay, all right, so I'm going to cut these out. Okay, are people showing up, leaving their city and state and all that good stuff? Yay! Thanks for coming back, you guys.
Shout out from Missouri Star Quilting Company.
Yay! Oh, hi. I'm so glad they're here. Okay, let's do this. All right, so I'm just going to get these little bits off. So you can see this makes a lot of mess. So if you have worked with Cuddle before or with Minky just in general and have been like, oh my goodness, it makes such a mess, this is why. It's because the rotary cutter really does make a mess. But you remember, you can totally do that with the blade. With the binding, I tend to do it with the rotary cutter just because it's faster. But on some of them, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about other kinds of bindings, some of them I will actually do with the blade every time because I want to keep that nap on there. Okay, so I'm going to move this real gently so I can put it back over here. I'll get my binding cut. This first strip. Okay, I'm trying to get this as straight as possible. You'll notice that it doesn't always go the way that I want it to, but you can actually just pull your fabric, manipulate it, make it go where you want it to go. Okay, so I'm going to put that back to where it was. Here's my 1 3/4. Oops, I moved it down here. Put that back in place and just cut again. Okay, So a lot of times people want to know if they could just fold this in half or fold it in thirds and do it. And I'll tell you why you don't want to do that. It's because this fabric is slippery. So if you do that, you will end up every time cutting it a little bit wacky. Okay, because it has so much nap, your bottom side will slip. Okay, the bottom layers will slip, and then you end up with not the right width. All right, so cut it one layer at a time for more accuracy. Like I said, it's the only time we really want to care too much about how things are. Okay, I'm gonna move this. This ruler is one that I haven't gotten the stuff on it, and I'm going to show you guys because you can see my ruler keeps slipping slightly, which is making me a little insane because it's moving on here. Okay, maybe insane might not be the right word. It's not bothering me that much. But, okay. So I'm going to gently move this up. I'm going to show you guys a little product that I really like too. I feel like that's half of what we're doing here too, is me showing you my favorite things. So this here, this is called Grippy. It's from a company called Odif. They're the people who make the 505 spray. Okay, and I love this stuff. A lot of quilt shops have it. I think that people use it for embroidery a lot. I don't. I use it for the back of my rulers, and I'm just going to actually spray this on, and I'll show you guys how it works. Okay. So I'm going to move to the side really quick so I don't spray this on my, oh man, that was a mess. Okay, let's see if I can get this guy open. Okay, I'm going to spray this over here. Hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, so what I did is I just spray the back of it and let it dry for a second, and what it will do is hold on to the fabric a lot better now. So some of the rulers, like Quilter Select does, there's a few of them that have like a backing on it that are really nice. It's a non-slip thing. So if you have rulers that you have bought before that don't have that, this product works really well for that. So it sort of makes those, the grip, they have a little bit of grip there. They'll hold on to your fabric a little bit better. Okay, so now it's not going to slide. Okay, so now I can stick it on here and it's not going to move hardly at all. All right, so that's what that stuff does. You can make more coats on it if you want to. I found that usually just one little layer, it's not even a thick layer, works really well and keeps it in place nicely. So what that does is it holds on here, so it's not going to slide as much. If you want it to really hold on tight, you can do more layers. Okay, I'm just going to line that up for my last one. Okay, were there any questions on that? It's pretty great stuff. I really do like it, and I've used it on a lot of my rulers because rulers are an expensive investment, and so if we don't have a reason to replace them, we really don't want to.
How often do you refresh this?
Actually, like I have done it maybe twice. I've been using it for about a year now, so I don't do it very often. That one had some residue from the 505 spray yesterday, so I ended up washing the whole thing with soap and water and a scrubby, and I got some of this, some of that grippy off, and so that's why it was sliding around a lot. Trash can. Is it over there? Oh no. All right, we're just gonna make a little pile over here. Okay, don't slip on that when you come back around, Hawk. All right, I'm gonna clean up my mess. Whoa! So much cuddle dust. Okay, so you can see this can totally suck it in. Just keep a hold on it. Oh, okay, that's better. Now I'm going to give it one good shake to the side. So normally what we do when we're in classes, we'll take them outside and give them a good shake, and that works pretty well. If you are at home, you can totally do all this cutting and then very gently move it to your dryer, the wet washcloth, let it tumble around, okay? Get rid of that. All right, I'm going to do a little shake. Get rid of some more. All right. Okay, now it's as good as it's going to get right now. But it's going to be really soft. Okay. All right, so now once we've got our strips together, we're going to sew them together. So the same way that you do your cotton bindings, we're going to sew these together in the same way to make a nice long binding that'll go all the way around the quilt. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to check which way our nap goes. So this is another time that we want to make sure they're going in the same way. I can tell that the nap is going this way because so much of it is following that direction on here. Okay, can you guys see that? So it comes this way a bunch, which means my nap is this way. If I do it this way, it feels a little bit weird. It's not a huge deal if they are a little bit off, but I found that it just looks nicer if they're the same. Okay, so I've got my two pieces here. This one, the nap is going this way. So I like, because I'm a very visual learner, I will put them both out this way, make sure they're both going the same direction, and then I'm going to flip this. So it's like this. I'm going to turn this so you guys can see it a little bit better, okay? Because this is the way it should look for you, okay? I let this overlap quite a lot because we're not going to need all of the binding, and I'm trying to get the selvage off. And if I leave it like this where I have these big tails, I can see where my corner is a lot better, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of pins in here. So one of the things that I do is that I like to pin so that I don't have to take the pins out. That's what we were talking yesterday, is I keep that second row of pins in, all right? And I like to pin it so that I can leave those in there. And I'm going to do that here so I can sew in between, okay? This is something that I do on a lot of different projects. So if you watch any of our other tutorial videos, you'll see that, okay? So I want to sew from here to here, all right? I can totally mark that with my ruler here. Okay, see if I can get in here, mark this. Here's my 45 line going across here. So I know this is the right angle, and I just want to sew there. If you've done this a few times, you can generally eyeball it. Okay, and then you're going to sew it. All right, so now we're going to come over here, and we're going to sew. All right, so I've got my machine set up. I've got my 9014 stretch needle. I've got polyester thread. I have my walking foot on there, and we're gonna sew. All right, so what I like to do with this is I like to pop my needle down, and then I bump my intersection where that line is. I can bump it right up to the needle, okay? Then I put my foot down and I know I'm in the right place. I'm gonna leave these pins in there so that everything stays where I want it to be. And then I'm just going to sew. I'm going to pop my stitch length up to a 3.5. Okay, and I am going to backstitch here. So yesterday on the strips, we never did backstitch because we just trimmed that all off. It doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to move this now because it was getting close and I don't want to run over my pin. Okay, and then I'm going to backstitch here. Okay, take that out. Now I can open this up. Looks like that's going to work. We'll do the next one over here. Okay, so I've got one more strip to do. Okay, but on the strip, this one we're going to backstitch. I was going to say so that it gives some strength to that intersection. So this is the fun part. Do you guys ever sew yours into a circle instead of into a strip? Huh? I'm sure I'm not the only one. I've seen it happen. Okay, I've been known to do it though a few times. All right, so now I've got my strips. I'm gonna do the same thing, pet them, make sure they're going the right direction. And I'm gonna stick this in here and pin it again, parallel to how I'm sewing. Okay, it's important to remember is that if we're pinning it here and I sew it along here, none of this fabric can move. If I pin it this direction, every time I take a pin out, it's going to shove this way a little bit more. Okay, so this parallel helps keep it in check and go where I want it to go. And keep the fabric where I want it to be. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Put my needle down. Bump this guy up there. Come on, put my foot down. Oh, there we go. To do it manually. Okay, back stitch a few stitches, and then just go right over to the other corner. Okay. So this is a great time if you have one of the little lasers, which I have on this one, and some of the other machines have those little laser guides. You can actually aim toward the other corner pretty easily. Okay, so that worked well. We're going to take this out. Okay. Take these pins out and look again, see if it worked. Sure did. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these corners off. So I'm going to do this with the little scissors so that I can make a little bit less mess. All right, because there's definitely like levels of mess that I want to make. When I'm doing the big strips, I'm okay making a big mess and I'll cut it all off. This one I'm just going to make a little mess. Cut off that tail. Okay, come around to the other side, do the same thing. I always want to sew it and then check it and then cut it, because sometimes you can accidentally sew it wrong and it doesn't quite flip right. Okay, if it's not perfect, if it's off up to 1/8 of an inch actually, you can totally leave it. Okay, so at this point I can see that my fibers are stuck in there, so I'm just going to come under here. I can use the tip of my scissors right now, just kind of pull those up a little, and it'll make that blend really nicely so that you can't see the seam so much. Okay, all right, and I'm going to do that to the other one if I can find it. There we go. Keep my mess to the side. So I always try to keep things, try to keep my mess away from everything else. Okay, so if you're doing this, if you do it right over the trash, you just dump it right into the trash. Give it a little shake in there. Super good. Okay. Do it over here. So you can see this is the side that I marked. I do it with a Sharpie because it doesn't show, and 2, it's wide. So if I didn't get it perfectly straight, it still looks like it was straight. Okay, so I'm going to pull these off. Any little bits, get rid of that so I have less mess to deal with. All right. Okay, got my big strings. All right. Okay, so there was that one. I'm going to pull these guys up too. Use my little scissors. This is where you can use your stiletto. Just pop those babies up. Okay, makes it look really nice. Once you've got that pulled up, totally hides your seam. Okay, so this is where it becomes important that you've done it in the same direction of the nap, because then it flows this way, and if these are opposite, it'll look real funky right there. Okay, and you can see that's not perfect, but it's okay. It'll totally work. All right, so once we're at this point, we have our big strip all put together. I'm going to vacuum up the little mess that we got. And then we're going to put this on. So one of the things that's different about working with Cuddle for a binding rather than cotton for a binding is we're actually going to do it from the back and put it to the front. So normally you would sew your binding, your cotton binding, to the front of your quilt, bring it around to the back, and then usually hand stitch it. But we're actually going to sew it to the back, bring it around to the front, and then machine stitch it. Okay? So that's what we're going to do first. What you need to do is to find a part to start with. I like to start on the side. I don't know why exactly, I just do. It tends to be what I do. You want to leave about a 10-inch gap that you're going to have tails, okay? So that when we bring it around, it will have a place to come back together. So one of the things, excuse me, one of the things that I like to do is when it's coming around to the front, I want the nap to come around this way to the front. Okay, so I can see that my nap is this way. Does that make sense? Okay, so I want it to come around this direction, and I just feel like it lays better when it does, when the nap goes toward the front of the quilt. So I have to figure out how to get this on here. Well, now I've started at the wrong tail because I'm not going to sew that direction. So I'm going to find the other end and see if I can make that work, and I'll show you what I mean here. Okay, so I want the nap to come toward the front. Okay, so if it'll do it like that, so I just need this to come this way. All right, so basically when I sew this on now, it'll flip around so that the nap comes this way. Okay, not super important, but just something that I like to keep in mind when I'm sewing them. All right, I grabbed a pin. There it is. All right, so what I do is I find a place that I'm going to start with. All right, you can see my sticky is coming undone, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. If you want to go in there and re-stick it, you can. Some people will go around the entire quilt afterward and do a big zigzag or just a straight stitch around this to keep it all in check. I just keep an eye on it as I'm sewing. Okay, so this is my tail that I'm going to leave over here to let it be free when I come back around. All right, that's going to be the tails that I join. Here, I'm going to start over here, 8-10 inches away, and I'm going to stick a pin. All right, these are the only 2 pins we're really, well, at each corner we will, but we're not pinning so much today. We're going to use a lot of wonder clips. Okay, so at this point, I can start doing wonder clips along the edge. So you can use just regular wonder clips, and this is what I've always done. Excuse me. Where's my, could you grab my water? Sorry, here. I'll hold this. We'll work together so I can get some water in my throat. Okay, thank you. So I've always used just regular wonder clips. And then recently at a class, I think the class that I was at in Kansas, somebody had the bigger wonder clips and we used those. And they worked really well because they held down more of it. Okay, so we're going to use a combination. So you can totally use your small wonder clips if you have them, but these big guys worked really well because you can see it holds down a lot more of the fabric. All right, as we sew this around. So for me, it was, I don't know, sort of an eye-opener that I was like, oh, well, that works well. And I happen to have a whole bag of these jumbo wonder clips that I haven't known what I was going to use them for. And now I know. Okay, so I'm going to clip these down a little bit. I'm going to stick a pin in here. If I can find my pins, there we go. And I'm going to stick a pin in here about 1/2 inch from the end. Okay, so you can measure that. You can measure, you can use your board for that measure. Okay, so here's my end, here's my 1/2 inch, stick my pin in here. Okay, and I'm going to stick a pin in here 1/2 inch from the end because that's where I want to come off the corner. So this works very similar to when you do the quilt bindings with cotton that you're going to sew down and sew off the end. So if you haven't done that technique before, this works really well to get your corners to miter nicely, and we're going to use it here. All right, so I'm going to get my little stiletto because I need that guy, and we're going to come sew. All right. So what I'm going to do, I stick a pin in here because this is my start. This is just holding it in place. This is where I'm going to stop when I come back around, but this is where I'm going to start. So I use those pins to sort of mark that, and it lets me put this under the foot and not get in the way. The wonder clips I can't get under the foot, obviously, because they're too large. So I'm going to get this under here. This is my 1/2 inch here. Okay. So that's, yeah. So this is the mark right here for 1/2 inch. And so I know that the edge of my foot basically right here is what I want to aim for. Okay. So whatever is working for you and your machine, that's what I want you to do. Okay. I'm going to start here. I'm going to stick my needle down, put my foot down, and then take my pin out. And I'm going to back stitch here. Okay. And then I'm just going to go forward. And we're going to stitch all the way around this guy. Okay, so you can see the binding, it'll grow a little bit. What you want to make sure, and so I just keep the stiletto and sort of try to keep it in check. What you want to do is make sure that it's not being pulled. That's really where things get a little bit crazy. And if you pull it, because it's a knit, it'll end up sort of bowling, and it'll kind of cup your whole quilt. So you can see this has grown a little bit. It's because I wasn't being super careful when I put my clips on. I just kind of stuck them on there to get it to hold in place a little bit. But it's not growing so much because I'm not pulling it. So the wonder clips hold it, but don't pull it. All right, so I don't want to do this and stretch it and then try to sew that down, because as soon as I let go, it'll pull back. All right, so that's one thing too about if you quilt with Cuddle on the back of your quilt, is to never pull it, because that actually causes a lot of issues when you pull it and then it retreats, because it's a knit, so it's going to stretch. Okay, so now I can see my pin is here as the 1/2 inch from the end, so I'm going to sew up here. I'm going to keep my stiletto so I can see where I'm going. I'm just going to go nice and slow. Okay, I'm going to take my pin out because I'm close, but I'm still going to go a couple of stitches. One more. There we go. Then I'm going to pop my foot up. Whoops. take the back of my machine off. Okay, then I'm just going to turn it, and now what I'm doing is I am aiming for this corner. So here's where I'm going to stitch. That's the guide on my machine. Okay, this is what I want to aim for. So this binding is continuing straight off the corner, and then, or off the edge, and then I'm going to sew toward the corner. Okay, so I'm just going to turn, sew toward there. I'm going to cut my thread and take it out. All right, so now I'm going to move over here just real quick. I'm going to show you how you do that corner. Okay, so now you can see we've gotten these big stitches all the way across here. These stitches, you want to have nice big stitches like this. Okay, I always say that you want it to look sort of like nice top stitching, because it's not really it doesn't have to hold the same way like tiny stitches on cotton would. Okay, what we want is it to be easy to stitch. If you do them too small, it takes too long to stitch and it's tighter than it needs to be. Okay, so nice big stitches. We've stitched off the corner. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our binding and bring it so that it goes straight up the side. All right, then I'm going to stick my finger in here and I'm going to pull this back and press it into place. So once I've gotten it here, I'm going to pin it in place. I'm going to show you a couple little things about this that are important. Okay, so one of them is that this fold here is below the raw edge. Okay, so when I look straight down on it, I can see this raw edge and I can see the fold. All right, okay, that's what you want it to look like, and you want these raw edges to match as well. Okay, so it's coming at a nice 45 in there. What happens is if this goes above those raw edges, you end up getting like a little pocket. And we don't want that little pocket. We want it to be a nice tight corner. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to put the clips back on here. I'm just going to put a few back. And then we're going to keep on sewing. Okay. And I'll show you how this works. So I'm going to put this down and give it a little bit of a, not really a tug, but sort of, just to keep it where I want it to be. Okay, see if we can get it to grow just a little bit less this time. All right, and then I'm going to check this, make sure that it's matching. I can see that it's a little bit off right here, and that's going to be okay. I'm just going to aim for just this edge. Okay, all right, so then we're going to keep sewing. And then I'll just keep moving those clips. So one thing to remember is that you're going to sew down this side. You are not sewing across here. This pin is really just to keep it out of your way. Do not sew across that top, okay? The other thing is you want to get this completely underneath. Put your needle down, put your foot down, okay? And then you're going to start sewing. You can see this is a little bit of ways behind the needle. I don't want to start before the fabric. Okay, so let me show you. I do not want to start it back here. That's what some people want to do, is they want to start sewing and then bring it under the foot. You don't want to do that because it's going to suck your fabric right down into it, and we don't want that to happen. All right, so we're going to start sewing. If it gets a little bit caught, that's what your stiletto is really good for, because it'll sort of push it right along. Okay. I'm just going to move these wonder clips and keep on sewing. You can see this wants to curl, and that's because it got sucked up in the vacuum and stretched. Okay, and for some reason that's what the stretch does to the knit, is makes it curl. Okay, I've got all of my fabric up on the table. Okay, so the whole thing is here, and I'm just going to work it around a little bit at a time. We're not trying to bind the whole thing at one whack, so do not use all of your wonder clips to check it, to put it in place, because you're going to have to move them. Okay, so now I'm at my last wonder clip, so I'm just going to come forward. I'm going to put another one in over here. Okay, I'll come down and put it in another one. And then I can take this one out and keep going. All right, so the important part is you're keeping about a ½ inch from the edge. If you go a little bit narrow, that's okay. If you go a little bit wide, it's going to cause you issues. So make sure that you're doing it a ½ inch or just a tiny bit less. Okay, so like I was telling you yesterday, the ½ inch seam allowance for the strips, totally fine. It's about a ½ inch. It's fine if it's a little bit more. It's fine if it's a little bit less. It's fine if it wobbles. Except when you come to the binding, and then we need to be really careful and get it accurate, okay? And it will make all the difference in how well your binding turns out. So I'm gonna go forward. We're gonna do the same thing here at the next corner. So if you're not very good at eyeballing your 1/2 inches yet, you can absolutely measure all of those first. I've done this a few times, so I'm pretty good at eyeballing that 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm gonna stick a pin in here. I'm gonna put a clip in. Hold it in place where I want it to. So don't fight with your fabric too much. Try to use those clips and the pins to keep it where you want it to be. And don't let it go too crazy, because it definitely, we always say Cuddle has a mind of its own, and it really does. It'll go all sorts of places if you're not careful. All right, so one more. I'm gonna turn it and do the same exact thing. Okay. All right. Do we have any questions out there that I can answer while I'm sewing this? I got a few more corners to do.
What do you mean by increase the settings on the dual feed?
Oh, well, you can increase, I'm not sure what I said, because I don't increase any settings on the dual feed. I will increase my stitch length, and I just make sure that I'm sewing nice and slowly. There is definitely a presser foot pressure, maybe that's what you mean, is changing the presser foot pressure, and that is on the dual feed or anything else, and you can totally make that come down a little bit less intense. Okay, and that is usually just in your settings, and it'll call it the presser foot pressure. So look for that. Most machines will do it. All right, and that makes a big difference, because especially at this point, we've got a lot of layers. Oops. We got a lot of layers that we're sewing through, and we have a thick backing, and then we've got our front fabric, we've got a layer of batting, we've got our backing fabric, and then we've got our binding. When we come around to the other side, we have even more layers. Okay, so if it's starting to fight you at all, oops, make sure that you are decreasing the presser foot pressure. That is really one of those things that is hard to say. Okay, is there another question?
If you needed to mark that 1/2 inch line on a darker fabric, what would you use?
Oh, I use silver Sharpies is what I use. So silver Sharpies, for some reason, they are not usable for as long as I would like them to be. They don't last as long as the black Sharpies. But they do work really well on the dark fabric. Okay, that works really well. You can also use, and I'm just making sure that my edges are lined up here. Okay. Okay, so you can also use a chalk marker. What I found is Taylor's chalk works really well, because really it's just like the piece of chalk. What I found is, like, if you have one of those Choco liners, and I generally love those things, except that they will snag on the back of this fabric. Okay, so I'm going to open up this seam as I sew over it, because I want it to lay as flat as possible. Okay, so I'm just opening that up, sewing over it. You can do it to one side, so if it starts to flip, don't worry about it. It just keeps it so that it's not as bulky right there. Okay, you can see that I can stab with this stiletto and sort of make it do what I want it to do, and I will do that a lot throughout this whole process. This stiletto really becomes like my third hand over here that I'm using. I never sew over my finger this way, which is great. And it also lets me have a lot of pressure, so I can actually like move the whole thing, because I can stab through all of it without it being an issue. And because it's a knit fabric, you can do that and it's not going to damage it. Okay. All right, any other questions? I'm happy to answer them, and I'm here for you. Otherwise, we're just going to keep sewing. Okay, so these clips are I really do like these longer clips. If you've got them, use them. The other thing here too is if we do this, and you can see like the sort of sticks out the side, if I kind of just swoosh it in, I can keep it where I want it to be. Okay, so that's what I do a lot. Don't worry about it if it pokes out the side. It's gonna do things like that. There we go. Okay, and like I said, I've got it at a bigger stitch length, so 3.5 stitch length. If it's not sewing very well, please open up your stitch length. Please, please, please. Okay, this is definitely a place where your machine can sort of bog down a little bit, and then it starts sewing really tiny little stitches, and that's not fun. Okay, But you remember, we talked about it yesterday, how to take the stitches out, and you can use that little Kai seam remover, or I really like, or you can use a blade and just slice in between, okay? Don't use a regular seam ripper with this because it'll just make you crazy, or at least stressed out. Nobody needs any more stress right now. Okay. Okay, so we're coming up to another corner, so I'm going to move this down, get that in place, and I'm going to stick my pin in. Okay, so you can put it through just the bottom or through the top too. This is something. Is the sound working better today, guys? Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop and do one more little stitch. Pop my foot up, turn it, so right off that corner, okay? So I'm gonna manipulate this just a little bit. Sometimes it'll get bogged down back here because you got a lot of fabric, okay? So I'm aiming, my needle is gonna come right for there, so that's where I put my corner, all right? Just make sure that this is coming off straight from your edge, okay? I'm gonna sew right off. Clip my thread, one more time. Actually, we have one more time after this. All right, same idea. Flip it up, flip it down, get that fold below the raw edge, okay? I can do this really fast and easy, and I will totally say that it is going to be easier for me than it will be for you the first time you do it. So don't judge yourself too harshly. I've had a lot of practice. Okay, so now I'm just going to come along this side, put a couple of those clips in. So you can see I've just been using the same 3 clips over and over again. Okay, I just move them along, and that works really well. Okay, do not feel like you need to clip the whole thing. It will just become a pain because you're moving it. You can also see back here all of my fibers that are caught in here. So this is another place that you'll come back later and you can totally fluff that all up, pull those stitches out. Not the stitches, you're pulling the fibers out. Don't pull your stitches out because that's going to be a problem. Just pull those fibers, okay? Fluff them up. So it's one of those things that's not absolutely necessary, but if you do it, it looks really nice. Also, like I said, it's sort of like a mindless thing that when you're, just watching some TV or whatever. Okay. All right, so I'm going to put this in. Put my needle down. Nope, I put my needle up. There we go. Okay, and you can see I knew this was a little bit thick right there, so I just stuck my stiletto and kind of guided it underneath the foot. Okay. Because all I want to do is for it to stay where I want it to stay. So you really do have to control it. It's something that comes up a lot when I'm teaching classes is people say, it just keeps moving. And it will. It'll just keep moving. So you really have to make sure that you are telling it where to go and keeping it in check with the pins or with the clips. All right. So I'll move that down. Take that one out for now. All right. So the fabric that we're using today for this, I think, is one of the fawns, like F-A-W-N, not like fawns from Happy Days. Yeah. Hey. But it is pretty cute. Okay, so we're using this one for this. All of the kits come with different cuddles, and we'll talk about it when I'm sewing it around the other side. I have some samples to show you. Then we'll talk about how the different fabrics work. So what we've done with the kits is we've tried to choose fabrics that will work well for the kits, that coordinate and are easy to sew. But if you want to do your own, you can totally choose a different fabric, a different Luxe Cuddle. We'll talk about using Cuddle 3 as well. I prefer Luxe Cuddle over Cuddle 3 by far, but that's my personal preference. We'll talk about why when I show you. And you can also, we were talking a little bit about quilting with this, like on the back. So if you can quilt with Cuddle on the back. And I was looking desperately for my samples this morning, and I think that they got, they're in my class bag that got left in Portland because I had to come home quickly from this last trip. And so I don't have any of my quilted samples here with me. Okay, so I'm going to get up here to my 1/2 inch. Okay, take a few more little stitches. Come around here, take my pin out. Do one more. Oops, I did 2. All right, twist this guy. I'm going to sew right off that end. So again, I'm lining up my corner with that little line, sewing right off. Okay. All right, so here's my last one. So this is my last corner. I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, we got lucky this time in that my corner does not have the seam. Yeah, it happens, and usually I just force it and keep on going. Mostly because taking it out is a pain in the rear. I don't want to do it. So we got lucky this time and it's not. Okay, so I folded it up, folded it back, make sure that it's all lined up with my fold below the raw edge. These raw edges are matching, and I'm going to pin those in place. Okay, so one more time. So now we have this side, and I need to get down to where I started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pin out, release the tail, but put the pin back in. This is where I want to stop. All right, so that I know. So if I do that, I have a big enough gap in here that I can sew those 2 ends together, and it's not going to give me too much hassle. If you do it too close, you don't have enough room to really manipulate the fabric, and then it becomes a little bit, I don't know, just more frustrating. So sometimes I will take those stitches out. If it gets too close, I'll have people take them out and redo it. All right, so here's my pin. That's going to be my stopping point. I'm just going to sew right along here. We'll stop it, and I'll show you how I combine those ends. Okay, and I have a few different methods for that one that I'll show you. It really just depends on which one works best for you. Okay, it's one of the things that I think is really important. So you can see this doesn't really want to move, so I'm just going to stick my stiletto in here, and I'm going to kind of move it forward just a little and catch it, okay, and keep it going. Okay, so sometimes I have to manipulate it a little bit too. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to get this out flat. So make sure that when you're working with the stuff coming into the fabric or into the machine, that you work with it to make it flat. Sometimes here, this is what I like to refer to as blind sewing, that I'm just hoping it's going where I want it to go. I've sort of got it in check with my stiletto, and I get through and I'm like, oh, okay, it worked. When we do self-binding blankets, sometimes with the Luxe Cuddle, it ends up being a lot of blind sewing. Then you just put it where you want it to be, hold it in place, and hope for the best. Okay. That's what we're doing here over those little fluffy areas. All right, so there's my pin. So I'm going to get up there and I'm going to stop. Okay, I'm going to hold that. Get that to go in. Take my pin out, and I'm going to back stitch here because I want that to have some strength. Okay. So if I don't back stitch, because I've got a 3.5 stitch length, it's pretty loose and I could pull it right out. And I don't want to do that. Okay, so now we've got our big tails. So what I'm going to do here, little scissors, and I'm going to cut this tail. So this one goes to here, and I'm going to have this one go to here, basically, just so they're comparable. Okay. Okay, so now I've got that. That's my trash. All right, and actually what I've used those for in the past, and I would recommend that you do this too, is that you can use those little bits to practice. All right, of anything I can say about doing binding is the more you do it, the better you get. It's definitely not first time out of the gate that it's going to be great. All right, so I'm going to show you 3 different ways that I do my bindings together. All right, so really what I want you to do is figure out what works best for you. All right, so I have done this a few times and I'm pretty good at this now. So I'm going to show you. So come over top, and because I want to show you guys what I've done is I've folded one binding up, one binding down. Okay, I've left a little gap in there. The reason I left that gap in there is because if I squish this down, they're basically going to touch now, but it's so fluffy and stretchy that I want them to have a little gap that I can see. Okay, so once I've got that in there, I'm going to put my fingers on either side of this. I'm going to hold them in place, not let them move, and I'm going to stick this underneath the fold, through this fold. I just kind of have to feel for it, and I flip this over and push it back through. Okay, this is where I want my seam allowance to be, or my seam to be. All right, so basically at this point, then I can manipulate it. I can move this so that I have some of that room to make things move around. I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to put it into more of a 90 degree. Okay, so I can hold it, and I'm going to stick another pin in here so that it's flat on the back, because I can feel on the other side I've got it nice and pinched. All right, but I've got this one is flat. So now that I have it where I want it to be, I'm going to take this one out, flatten that all out nicely, stick this one back in. Okay, so now I have it so that I can sew just like I did at the beginning, from this corner to this corner, and it will fit. Okay, super weird little way of doing it, and you cannot do it with cotton batting or binding, but you can do it with Cuddle. It takes a little bit of practice, but it totally works. Okay, so that's the way I do the one. I'm going to show you again just the start of that. Okay, so I fold one up, fold one down, pinch it with my fingers, hold it in place, stab it, flip that, and stab it again. Okay, then I manipulate it. All right, so that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, you're going to start it basically the same way, with one up, one down, and then what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to pinch this and I'm going to put a pin right in the fold. Okay, so what I'm doing is marking that fold line. Okay, and really I just have to feel it. So you can't see, and either can I. I'm really just feeling where that fold is, because I want it to come in the fabric and back out. Okay, so there it is in my fold. Okay, so I've got that one there. This one is going to come down at a right angle. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to grab it, pinch it, don't let it move anywhere, and I'm going to stick it right in that fold. Okay, so now I've got them both in basically a 45, 47, 41 degree angle here, and I'm going to put these together. So again, I'm going to move my quilt so I can gather these together, and I'm going to make these kiss. Okay, and you can feel them in there and make them touch each other. All right, at this point I'm going to grab a different pin and I'm going to stick it in here, because I don't want to take those two pins out. They're where I want it to be. So now I have to get it so that it will work. Okay, yeah, I can feel that slip just a little bit, so I'm going to repin that. Okay, and then I can come over here, take one of those pins out, repin it here, and then I'll take that pin out and do the same thing and sew from here to here and combine my ends. Okay, so that's a little bit easier way for some people, is just putting those pins in the fold and then making them kiss. Okay, the other way is to do it the way that you do with quilting cotton, where you're going to take that piece that you had, you're going to overlap these. Okay, and I'm going to put one down here, and I can mark it here, mark the other one here. Okay, so it's the width of your fabric, and then you make these guys come together so they match this way. So one edge matches that marking, the other edge matches the other marking, and then I'm going to sew from here to here. Okay, so if you do this with your cotton batting or bindings, if you know what I'm talking about with this method, go ahead and use it. I really prefer my first one, so I'm going to go back to that one. That one I have a lot more accuracy with, just personally. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there are different ways of doing it that that you can do, and just find the one that works best for you. All right. So I'm going to go in here, stab it, move it over. Okay, move my fabric, get it so I can manipulate it a little bit and get it into the right position. Okay, so now we're going to go sew this. Now I will tell you that sometimes it doesn't work quite right and I have to do it again. But the way that I showed you yesterday to take the stitches out with the little blade or whatever, well, makes it really pretty easy. Okay, the hardest part of this is trying to manipulate all of this quilt to kind of come together so that I can get this little bit of the binding underneath the machine. So get this part as flat as possible. This can do whatever the heck it needs to do, but get your bindings nice and flat. Okay, so I'm going to stick my needle down, bump that guy up there, put my foot down, and then I'm going to aim for here. So I'm going to show you, see if I can get my little, yeah, see my little laser? So if you have a little laser on your machine, you can totally use it for this. Okay, we're going to stitch, go forward, backward. Okay, just aim for that other intersection. Back stitch, cut my thread. All right, so now, before I do anything else, I'm going to check it and make sure that it worked. Okay, so there I can pull it out. It fits in that section really nicely. Okay, so now I can cut these big tails off. All right, so if you are struggling, you can definitely bump these up end to end, but what happens if you do that is you have a really, really thick intersection of your seams that is a little bit harder to sew over when you do your front part. Okay. All right, so now I've got that down. Okay, so this one fits perfectly fine, and I could probably put this in the machine and it would sew up good. So you'll notice that this is just the tiniest bit, so if I pull it like this, it's straight. And that's actually what we want, is it not to be loose, is it to have a little bit of a pull. But what I like to do when I do it this way, because I'm trying to make sure that this fabric fits this fabric perfectly, is that now I'm gonna put this against my feed dogs. Okay, so I'm going to grab a couple of pins and I'm going to pin this part because I want it to stay. Okay, so with the Wonder Clips, we were using those before because it was okay if it shifted a little bit. This part, we don't want it to shift at all, so I'm going to pin it. Okay, give it a little stretch, put that in there. Okay, and it's just the tiniest bit of stretch, but what it does is it makes it fit right there. It's the same method I use for when I bind my cotton quilts too, is I give that just a little bit of stretch. So now I'm going to sew it this direction. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that that's nice and flat, slide it under my machine, and get it back to where I sewed before. Okay, so there's my little seam line. Okay, so I'll put my needle down, and now I'm going to sew right along that edge. Oops. And I'm going to get my 1/2 inch seam here to match up with my 1/2 inch seam down there. And what I need to do from behind is I kind of just keep a feel on it and make sure that it is staying flat, because your binding sometimes will want to curl back there because it's a knit, and because I sucked it up in the vacuum, it wants to curl a little, so it can sort of shove underneath there, which we don't want. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep a finger back here where I can feel it, make sure that it's flat. Okay, and I'm just going to aim for that other line, 1/2 inch seam allowance. There it is. We're going to combine it. I'm just going to overlap it a little bit and then take it out. All right. So now we've got our binding all the way sewed on. Were there any questions about that? People got it? Did they love it? Okay. So now we've got the whole thing sewn on. We've sewn it to the back. Okay. Take out your extra pins. Okay, so now I'm going to be able to curl this around. So the way that I do it is I start at a corner. All right, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to pull this around. And I'm going to give it a good tug because I want this to come all the way back around. This is the part that gets tricky for people. Whoops. Okay, is because what we think we want is for this to come way over here, and you don't. You want it to just come past your stitching. So this raw edge is going to come right over here. If I can grab it, it's going to come right over here. Okay, we want it to just cover your stitching. So what I want to do is I'm going to pull this over so that I'm pulling it straight right now. If I start at the corner, it's a little bit easier to tug it off grain basically. Okay, so I'm going to start down here and then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to tug this, push this, and pop that in there. Okay, I'm going to get that in there and I'm going to do a few of these, but not very many. The same way before, as I did before, because one, I just don't want to have to take the time to clip all of these. It's not going to move so much now, but I really don't want to do all the clipping. Okay, so I can see that this, if I pull it over, I could pull this further. I'm really going to work on getting this over to here while I'm sewing it. Okay, so this gets, this is the part that people stumble, is because they think that this needs to be further. It doesn't. You're going to pull it. And people always ask me like, but I have to really pull it. And yes, you're going to have to pull it. So that's going to work, because basically what you're doing is you're enveloping all of this into that seam so that it becomes like kind of a puffy little binding. All right. So I'm going to sew a little bit, and then we'll talk about some other bindings as well. Okay, so let me show you how I do this. So when I do the bindings, there are a couple of different stitches that you can use. I prefer the zigzag, so I use just a big zigzag. Okay, it's just a simple zigzag stitch. It's not the 3-stitch zigzag or a stretch zigzag or anything like that. It's just a big zigzag. And then I use it with a 5 width and 5 length, so it's a really, really big one. If you were to use this on anything else, it probably wouldn't work so well, but on Cuddle it works great, okay? And what that does is it gives you a big enough zigzag that it holds down your fabric, but it also lets all of that fiber come back up later. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle down, and then I'm going to pick it up, because what I want is it to come on the left side. So as it comes on the left side, I want it to come just to that raw edge and just to the seam allowance, or to the seam line. Okay, so I'm put my foot down, put my needle down. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to sew. So at this point, my big job is to keep this fabric, if I can pop that up just a little bit, there it is, to keep this fabric right along there. So this whole time you're going to see me, and I will grab this and hold this down. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do, is just keep that. So what I'm doing is I'm watching the edge. I'm watching this edge over here and making sure that this fabric comes right up to it. Okay, if it doesn't, you'll see that seam. And so we're going to try to avoid that. But I just do a little bit at a time. Okay, it's really definitely like the slow part here, is we're just going to take it nice and slow and stitch that all down. Okay, take my clip out. I'll move this over. Keep stitching. Okay, so you can see I'm just doing a little bit at a time, and I don't even know what that is, 6 stitches, and then I stop. It's not very, it's not super fast, but it will look really nice. So this is the part I always like to do this when I'm doing my own quilts at home. I will do it just like we did this time, where I put the front together one day and then I put the binding on it the next, because honestly the binding requires some focus. We got to think about what we're doing, make sure it's really nice. And if you do it at the end of the day when you're tired, it's a little harder to get it right. Okay. So I can't see that edge any better than you can, just so you know. But what I'm doing is I grab it so that I can see where the edge is. I put it in place and I stab through all the layers, and then I hold it that direction. Okay. So and I will just stop and reposition and stop and reposition. Okay. So this is where it's starting to curl. It curled in on me, and so then it causes a little bit of extra work for me to pull that around. Do you see how this curls right here? So that's really because I sucked it in the vacuum, which you're not supposed to do. It stretches it. Okay, I keep on going. All right, so I'm going to show you over here. This is what it's looking like. Oops, here I got it a little bit off. That's all right. So we're just going to come over here, and then we can fluff this all up. Okay, and it'll hide all of our seams. Same thing's going to happen on the back. We're just going to fluff that up, make it all meld together. Okay, so I'm going to keep stitching. I'm going to have Hawk come around, and he's going to show you guys some other bindings, and I'm going to talk about them. Okay, so you guys can see, because I'm going to just keep doing the same thing where I'm sewing a zigzag all the way around. All right, but we're going to talk about some others, because there are other fabrics that you can use for doing the bindings, and there are some other stitches that you can use for doing the binding. All right, But this is sort of a slow, tedious process that I figured you guys could see some other stuff instead of just me sewing the whole time. All right, so show the this version of it. So this one is done with a serpentine stitch instead of a zigzag. Okay, so this one, if you look at it, you can see it sort of goes, I don't know, like a little S shape. All right, so the sample maker there did a little S-shaped zigzag or stitch on it. So that's the serpentine. Okay, so if you have that on your machine, which most of them do, and you like that one, a lot of people do. Let me see if this one is sewn. Yeah, this one was sewn from the back to the front. Okay, so the serpentine is nice because it's you can see it, and it's a pretty little stitch. A lot of machines have it. I prefer the zigzag personally, just because I can hide the fluff, will hide the stitches a little bit better in my mind. So I like it, but it really is personal preference. Okay. All right. So what else do we have there? So you can see, you can do it either way. So I just wanted you to be able to see what it looks like differently on both of them. And I'll show you this one when I'm finished, what the end looks like. Okay. So that one is a Cuddle 3. So that's just a regular old Cuddle. All right, so just one of the flat cuddles, we like to call it. And that one is done with a serpentine as well, I believe. Or it might be a 3-stitch zigzag. I'd have to look really closely to tell. But it's definitely not the little zigzag like I'm doing, okay? The reason that I prefer to do the fluff is because, as you can see all your stitches. So when it goes a little bit haywire on you, you can see it. So if you have Cuddle 3 in your kit, you can totally change it out for a fluffy one. And I just, like, personally, I like it. If you can get your stitches really good, it looks beautiful because it shows all of your stitches. But if you can't, then it just shows that you didn't. And I try to avoid that, obviously. Okay, that one is done with our Luna, I believe. And that one is sewn to the back and brought around to the front. Wait. I'm trying to see where there's a raw edge. I think this one, whoever did this one, tucked it underneath. Oh my goodness, they did. So this sample sewer decided to turn it. You do not have to do that, okay? So this one is done with a big zigzag, and you can see that it sort of, I don't know, smushes down the edge or whatever, but that's the Luna. So if you bring it up and show this strip here of the green, and that's what it originally looked like, okay? And it has those sort of like stripy bits in it. That's what that originally looked like, and then as you use it as the binding, you sort of lose the stripe. There's another one we have. Oh, let me grab this fabric. So this one, it's a lot like our chenille. I can't remember what that one is called. If Ellen can pop in and tell me what it is. That one is really great for binding because the edge of it is, it's nice and solid, but it also hides your stitches, and it has a really fun little, sort of a knitted look to it. I really like that one a lot, actually. And that one's a great binding. So that was the point of showing you that, is that style. One of the quilts that I have that I wanted to show you, but I don't have it, has blue chenille, navy chenille on the side, and it is definitely a favorite for a lot of people. I get a lot of compliments on that one. So those are some samples that you can do, and some different stitches. Okay, so you can use the zigzag or the serpentine. You can also, if you use the same fabric that you use for your backing, and for this is on like the last strip of it, on the front is all this black marble, which is beautiful. And then I used a black thread and a zigzag, brought it around to the front, zigzagged it down, and you can't see those stitches at all. It totally hides in there. It sort of just blends with that last strip and blends with the backing. So if you flip it on either side, you can't really see the stitches at all. It's great. So that's my favorite. That one I actually made, so that's why I can talk about it better, is because I know how it was made. I did it. And I really love that. So that's kind of my favorite way of doing it. If I do my own quilts, I try to do Cuddle on the back and then a matching one on the front. So even if I did a, like if it's quilted and I have it long-armed, with the Cuddle 3 on the back, I'll often use a Luxe Cuddle for the binding because it's so much better. Are there questions on that?
It was a Luxe Cuddle weave.
Luxe Cuddle Weave. Okay, that's what that is. It really is one of my favorites. I think it's so pretty.
And somebody just popped in, and can you talk about your stiletto one more time?
Yeah, this stiletto is amazing, and I really do love it. It's the, okay, it is the stiletto from By Annie. So it's from byannie.com. Ta-da! Okay, you see that name? There we go. There we go. By Annie. Oh, yeah. She's the one who makes all of those bags, like really fun little bags that uses the soft and stable. And so she invented this for that purpose. I love this stiletto, though. I'll tell you a few things about it that are really great. One, you can see it's easy to hold. It stabs through all the fabric and it holds it really nice, which I like. Okay, the other thing is that it has these little flat spots on it, so it doesn't fall anywhere. So if I put it down, it just stays there. It doesn't roll off my table. Okay, the other thing is that this little end, you might not be able to see so well, but it's not smooth. It's actually been sandblasted. Okay, you can see a little bit. It's got some little bumps on it there, and that's what holds it onto the fabric. Okay, so when I put it on the fabric like this, I can actually move the fabric this way. It doesn't slide on it, and it's because of that sandblasting. Okay, so it's a great little stiletto. They run around $20, and it's very, very well worth the investment. Okay, so we're back. This is my second corner. You guys missed the first one, and that's okay. So what I do here is I just pull this, and I'm going to push this up, and I'm going to hope that it's something like a 45-degree angle. Okay, I don't really care if it's right. And I'm just going to hold it down in place as I get there. So I'm going to drag that over, see if I can get that stitched down. And now as I get closer to this, I'm just going to keep this in check. You can see I really can't see what I'm doing. I'm just, you know, sewing toward it. I'm going to use my stiletto, keep that down, and I'm going to stitch onto that 45-degree angle corner. Okay, so now I'm in my miter. So now what I like to do is bring this guy over, wonder clip it to keep it in place so that I can turn this now. All right, so now it's going to keep that next little bit in place, and I'm going to keep on sewing. Okay, try to drag that through a little bit. Okay, and you can see it doesn't always want to do what I want it to do, but we just make it. Okay, so now I'm going to drag this, pull this around, push it into place, and keep zigzagging. Okay, and if I get a little off, it's okay. We're trying to keep a nice even edge, and that's really the biggest point. So we have it all up on the table, and I'm just going to try to move it around so that I can keep it coming through straight here. So I tend not to use my wonder clips too much when I'm doing this, but I'll stick a few on here for you guys, so you guys can see. Okay, so that will hold it in check for me a little bit, and I can kind of aim it toward here. Okay, I really like it when it's on the double fluffy part. So when you have luxe and luxe next to each other, and then you do the zigzags, you'll never, ever, ever see them. So that's sort of a nice part there. And so if you get a little bit off, it's okay. Okay, I'm gonna keep coming up here. All right. So you can do this, like I said, you can do this on Cuddle quilts. You can also do it on Cuddle backed quilts. So if you have a long arm, or you have a favorite long armor, then you can use the Cuddle on the back of it, and then just bind with the Luxe Cuddle, and it's really beautiful. And it's great for blankets or quilts that you are making for little kids who are going to drag that thing around and sort of destroy it, because oftentimes when we make cotton quilts, the part that gets destroyed first is the binding, because they've dragged it around, they've stuck it in their mouth, they've gotten it really filthy, and it wears out. But because Cuddle is a polyester, it's going to wear a lot longer and a lot harder. It's going to take harder wear before it starts getting destroyed. So if you do a Cuddle or a cotton front, a Cuddle back, and Cuddle binding, it makes for a really long wearing baby quilt that will get used for years and years and years, which is really what we want when we make quilts for people. Okay. All right, so I'm coming up here. So you can see here I've got another seam. All right, so I'm gonna turn this over, and when I get there, I'm gonna have to kind of work over that. It will often be where your machine hiccups, is over those little seams. You'll see that you can see I have a hand back here that I'm just sort of keeping it guiding in the right direction for what I want. Okay. And I'm gonna use that hand to sort of keep it through as I go over this. So I'm gonna put another clip up here, so that it can stay where I want it to be. Okay, because I'm gonna have to take this clip out, and this is the one that's holding down that seam. Okay, there's my seam, you can see it. I'll fluff it up just a little bit. Okay, so I've got a little nib that's hanging out there. I'm just gonna shove it under. I'm gonna stab it really hard right there, and I'm just gonna bring it through my machine. Okay, and hope for the best. Okay, so I was just able to work it through the machine because I'm just stabbing it with that stiletto and going forward. Okay. So any store that you know, and please, you know, visit your local quilt shop online, see what they're doing. A lot of the quilt shops are doing little lives and stuff, but a lot of them, especially if they work with bags a lot, and I know there's a lot of quilt shops that sort of focus on bag making, they'll have this little tool for you. Okay. But make sure you see what your local quilt shop is doing. A lot of them are staying open in that they're staying open online. So they are still shoppable. I just bought some needles from my local quilt shop here called Sewing Arts in Santa Monica. And I'm getting ready to buy a new foot for this machine because I can't find my zipper foot. Okay, so I'm going to put this over here, clip this in place, and now I'm going to do that same thing. So if I use this stiletto, I can actually like sort of pull this down and push that up. Okay, like I said, I use the stiletto a lot as sort of another finger. Okay, so now I've got that pinned in place. So I'm just going to aim for that. Okay, and as I get closer to it, I'll take that pin out because I really don't want to run over these pins. Okay, I'm going to hold that in place. I can stab my stiletto in there, get it to go over that corner, and then I'm going to pop this up, turn it, try to keep it in place, and keep on going. Okay.
All
right.
Sharp, right? Not a ballpoint.
Oh no, it's very sharp, very, very, very sharp. You can see it's a nice sharp point. Bink. Yeah, it will stab you really hard if you're not very careful. That I do know. Yeah, a ballpoint wouldn't work as well because what we want it to do is to stab through here and be able to hold it. Okay, remove this. I think we just have, oh, this is the last side. We're already there, you guys. All right, put another clip in here. Stab this and bring it on over. Okay. So if you want to bring the camera over here, you might be able to see this little raw edge a little bit and how I'm doing this, and that I'm bringing this over and stabbing it down.
Oh yeah, that's a good view.
Okay. So I can bring it over, stab it down. If it gets off, and you'll notice that mine is off a little bit in certain places, I honestly, yeah, sometimes I care and sometimes I don't. I try not to care too much because the point of this fabric is that it's really soft and yummy. Okay, not that it's perfectly made. I try to leave my perfectly made stuff to, well, it's not even perfectly made. But cotton, I get really, you know, fidgety about. I love really intricate piecing. Cuddle, it's really about the soft. Okay, I'm gonna put a few more clips in here so it doesn't get too out of place for me. Okay, and I'm gonna keep doing that same thing where I'm just gonna grab a little bit, bring it over, stitch it down. And I really just try to aim for that left needle coming off the edge. I promise the first few times it will be a lot harder than it is after you've done it a few times. One of the things that I suggest when I do classes too is that if you've got some extra fabric, you can put a couple of Cuddle pieces together. You could quilt it or not. stick them together, and then bind it. So if you start with like a 20 by 20 piece of some Cuddle stuck together, bind it once, then cut that binding off and do it again, and then cut the binding off and do it again. And that's how I practiced the first time, because I didn't want to keep making quilts and then have the bindings be bad, because that was very frustrating. My first one was horrible, and so I took it around and showed people how terrible it was. Until finally, about 2 years later, I actually took all the binding off and redid it. And that was when I used that chenille, which I'd love to show you, but can't, sorry. Okay. So I'm just going to stitch this down. You can see the Wonder Clips hold it in place pretty well for what I need, so I can at least aim for the right place. Okay. And then as I come down here to this corner, so now I'm back almost up to the corner here, and I'm just going to take this, fold it, and I'm going to clip it for right now. So as I get closer, I'll use my stiletto and maybe a pin. Okay, so I'm coming here, get that all the way, take that guy out. Okay, so for me, this stiletto makes it so that it's much easier to pull this over. If you're trying to do that with the clips, it's hard to keep it in place. We have a porcupine quill, and that one works okay. There are a couple other stilettos that are out there. Okay, so I'm just manipulating this so that I can sort of get it where I want it to be. Okay, I'm trying to just shove it. And then I'm going to stick a pin in here so that it will basically stay. A lot of this really is just by feel and trying to make sure that it's, you know, probably close. Which is especially why I like doing that, like that black one where it was on the front and the back and the binding, because then no matter what, you can't really see how it got messed up, if it got messed up, which it always does. Okay, so now we've got that all the way around. Okay, so what I can do is I can go over this. I'll flip out all of my little fuzzes here. Okay, so if I were to use something like rose Cuddle, which I'll show you in just a second if you're not familiar, I will usually use that with a blade so that it will come over more. This I'm fine with how a little bit of it is short and a little bit isn't. Okay, it's because the nap all goes basically in the same direction. All right, so you're going to do that all the way around. It's a nice little thing to do. Okay, so there's some corners. Let's see. And that one I got a little bit off. See if I got a little corner that's right. Oh, this one's a little bit closer. Okay. So this one is your corner. You can see that the corners, they just sort of come together in, like, you can't see that 45. Like, it actually, we did the 45. You watched me do it, and you can't see it on any of the corners because it just comes around and is just fluffy. It's just fluffy. And that's the whole point, is it's just fluffy and yummy. Okay. So, all right. So let's pull this back. Do you want to head around to the other side, see if we can not get too caught up in our little wires here? We did a wired microphone, and I think that is working better for you guys. So I really do want it to work for you. All right, so here we go, the whole thing. Ta-da! All right. Ta-da! Beautiful, right? Look it, we made a blanket, guys. Super excited. So let me see if I can find rose Cuddle, and I can't believe I don't have any sitting right up here. So rose Cuddle, I've got it like stashed all over my studio, so I'm like, there's got to be some somewhere. Rose Cuddle is the stuff that you see a lot, and it's just like it's all sort of swirled together. I really feel like I need to find some. Oh, I can't. Anyway, okay, fine. Go look it up on our website. Rose Cuddle is the stuff that has like all these little swirls in it. Okay, they look like roses. And it's one that the nap goes both direction, because those roses come this way and then they kind of overlap over here. And they do all sorts of little things. Well, what happens is if you cut that with the rotary cutter is that you cut off like one edge of that rose, okay? So that becomes a problem, is that you've cut off the side of it. And so then it's not going to actually go over you when you do the binding. You'll see that edge where you've cut off the rows. So when you're doing rose cuddle or anything like that where they sort of swirl around like that, make sure that you're actually using the blade to cut it. So, oh, are you going to get some? It's in the top right hand one, or is that it? Yeah, there we go. Hey, yay, look. I organized my studio and now I know where things are. Okay, so this is it right here. Okay, so you can see the little swirly bits. If I cut this, it cuts those swirly bits in half. So what we want to do is keep it so that those swirly bits keep going. So use a blade for that one. Trying to think if there's another one that I do that with. And I don't see any. So there's we have a bunch of different fabrics. So the dimple is definitely one that people are familiar with, and the dimple gets seen a lot. So this is the little dot one. Okay, this one is fine for a backing, and it's really cute for like little blankets and for using, I like it on the inside of self-binding blankets because it's super textury. It's very nice. I don't recommend it for bindings though because it has a 4-way stretch. So this one will stretch all the directions because of the dots, so it has more stretch than the other ones. So doing the binding can get a little bit difficult. So my favorites are the hide. So this is a hide. Can you see it? So this is a hide. This is the marble. I think this is a galaxy. We have a whole bunch of different ones that have texture. We have like these little sparkly ones, which you should just put in your quilt because it's beautiful. A lot of these have some texture. This is one called Brooklyn that I really like that's great for the back of a quilt or for the back of a blanket, not so much for the binding. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of them. I really recommend that you use some sort of a luxe cuddle, textury, sort of fun thing. Like I said, what did we say that one was called? Weave? Weave is my favorite. That one and chenille are my favorites for them. We also have Ziggy. So this is another one that we have that has some texture in it that will be a nice binding. So basically it ends up looking like this along your edge. Okay, which is super cute. So kind of you can try out your binding by looking at how it would look across the edge of it, across the top, okay, width-wise of the fabric, and that's what your binding would look like. So those are kind of fun to do. So you have all sorts of choices when you're choosing what to bind your quilts with, and definitely some are easier than others. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer. I've seen lots of them made, and I've made lots myself trying different things because I really just want to see how things work. Okay, are there any other questions that we have that I didn't answer? We're good?
I think so.
All right.
I mean, there are questions, but they kind of got lost in the so.
But nothing that I have to answer right this second. Okay, so we did a binding, we did a quilt. I'm very excited. So we're going to be back next week because we're going to be we're safer at home for another month, I think is what they were talking about, right? So we've got 4 more weeks at least of this. Probably longer before I get back on the road. And so we're going to do this every week. Sew together Tuesday, sometimes on Wednesday. And we're going to sew different projects. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to ask you guys what you wanted to make. So I have 4 patterns, I think. Yep, I've got 4 patterns to choose from, guys. Okay, so for next week, we haven't, or was it the week after? Okay, Ellen's going to have to tell me which one we wanted to make next. All right, so I've got 4 patterns to choose from, and so we're going to have you basically vote. Let me know what you would like to make. Did she tell us? So what we're going to do is we're going to vote on which pattern you want to learn how to make with Cuddle. Okay, and so I've made I think all of them now.
Winner.
Oh, okay. And so we're going to. What was that?
That'll go away.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, so I should just announce it. Okay, so the winner, let's do the winner before my phone battery dies because it's getting low, is Donna Weller Ripley of Conway, Arkansas. So congratulations. We will get you a kit, and we'll get a hold of you so that we can get the information for shipping it and all that good stuff, and we'll get you a kit. The same size as this so that you could follow along the video. We will post this video on YouTube. I also have several other videos on how to make the strip quilts. Usually ones that I have just shown you step outs for it, and this one I actually got to sew the whole thing with you, so thank you. Okay, so next week we're going to do a little throw. throw. So basically just a little blanket, super duper easy. We're going to learn how to do that, and that'll be next Wednesday. I'm going to show you how to make a small one. So if you want to do it, we have the pattern. It's available on our website. Okay, I think it's called the Luxe Throw, and you're going to want 4 yards of fabric to make it the size that's in the pattern. So if you want to make one smaller, you're welcome to. I'm going to do one next week that's a smaller version of it, just so we can make it here on the on my cutting table. But I'll show you how to do that. They're really super quick. They're really easy to do, and they're a great gift for all sorts of things. So you can use lots of different Luxe Cuddles and put those together. So I'll have examples for you next week, show you how to do it. It's going to be great. So the week after that is what we're voting on for which patterns we want to use. So I have 4 of them to choose from, and I kind of want to do all of them. So if you want to give me a ranking of what you want to do first, second, third, and fourth, that would be awesome. Or if one of them you're like, yes, that one, only that one, it's the only one I care about, you could tell me that too. But I kind of like all of them. Okay, so this one is the Quilt Cadets pattern company. So it's a kid-friendly pattern company, and her patterns are awesome. Okay, I'm going to show you just really quick. And all of these should be available for download, or they're available at your local quilt shops. So this one has all of these variations on pillow fronts that we can make out of Cuddle. Super duper cute. So it's a child-friendly pattern, but it's totally useful for you too. So she's got lots of variations in here, and it's a super well written, easy to do pattern. So we're going to learn how to put these together, doing applique with the Cuddle fabrics. Okay, so we have this one. This kind of is my favorite, and I think I'll probably make that version. So we've got that one. We've got the jelly bean face pillows from McKay Manor Musers. These are super duper easy. This is more applique and some little fun things that make them into cute little animals. Okay, so if you want to do this one, I want to know which animal you want to do too. Okay, so we've got these, and then we've got the Natty Nag, which is from Rustic Horseshoe, and she has this cute little horse. That he's a bit bigger guy. He's probably about, like, I don't know, 18 inches or something. Super cute little one that I have, and so we can make this one, and we can make this one. So this is the elephant that a few people have asked about. So that's this guy here. Okay, so this is Ellie Elephant from Funky Friends Factory Patterns, and she makes a whole bunch of stuffies. So her patterns are really good as well. So all of these are great patterns. I totally recommend all of them. I think they're all adorable. I want to make all of them next week, and we can't. We're going to make a throw next week, and then the next week we'll make something else. But I want to know what you guys want to make. So please let us know in the comments. You can vote on Instagram. So that might be, double up your vote. Vote twice. It's totally fine. And let us know which one you want to make. All right? So thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us again for Sew Together Tuesday/Wednesday. And we'll be back next Tuesday for Sew Together Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. If you are interested in following every time, you can sign up for notifications on our Facebook page, and it'll let you know. We're also posting all of these videos on Instagram and YouTube, so you can go back and watch them later on whatever platform you would like. So on our Instagram, you can follow us. You can follow me. You can also follow us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel and get more information on when we put out other videos as well. Okay, so we do lots of tutorials on there. Anything else? Congratulations on the winner.
Tell you the early runner seems to be the jelly bean chick.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's the way it's going to end, but that's the way it started.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of love it too. So super cute. Yeah. So the yellow one or this one? Which one? I don't know. Oh, the chick. It says here, chick and duckling. Got it. Okay, good, because this is the one I really like too. I think it's super cute. She actually has a bunch of variations on this, so it'll be a fun one to do. Okay, good. Well, thank you for voting, guys. Keep it up. Keep sewing. Have fun sewing, and please let me know if you have any questions. Leave comments, or you can tag me personally, and I will get back to you. And yeah, we'll see you next week. And until then, happy sewing.